65 kilometers. That is the entire distance between Belarus and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, measured across a narrow strip of Polish and Lithuanian farmland. 65 kilometers of NATO territory that, if seized, would sever the only land connection between the Baltic states and the rest of the alliance. NATO commanders have a name for it, the Suwałki Gap, and for the past decade, they have called it the most dangerous piece of terrain in Europe. The geography here is almost absurdly consequential. To the south, Belarus, a Russian client state that has hosted Russian forces on its soil since the invasion of Ukraine began in 2022, and where Russian tactical nuclear weapons were deployed in 2023. To the north, Kaliningrad, a Russian military exclave sitting on the Baltic coast. Sandwiched between Poland and Lithuania, separated from mainland Russia by hundreds of kilometers of NATO and European Union territory, and between them, this thin corridor, a two-lane highway, some railroad tracks, forests, and farmland running roughly from the Polish town of Suwałki to the Lithuanian border. Nothing about it looks like a flashpoint. Everything about it functions as one. Kaliningrad is the reason this gap exists and the reason it matters. The exclave was German territory, Königsberg, until the Soviet Union seized it at the end of World War II. The original Prussian capital, home to the philosopher Immanuel Kant, was leveled and renamed and reborn as a fortress. Today it is home to approximately 12,000 Russian troops, Iskander M ballistic missile systems with a range exceeding 500 kilometers, enough to reach Warsaw, Berlin, and Copenhagen, and Bastion P anti-ship missiles whose reach extends across much of the Baltic Sea. S-400 air defense batteries cover the airspace above Poland and the Baltics. Analysts describe it as the most layered anti-access complex in Europe, a fortified enclave that can threaten almost every capital in the region without firing a shot. Simply by existing, Russia stations its Baltic fleet there. Its submarines operate from there. Its Kalibr cruise missiles, capable of striking targets 1,500 kilometers away, are deployed on corvettes in the harbor. And it is widely assessed that Kaliningrad holds approximately 100 nuclear warheads, giving Russia a nuclear backstop for any conventional escalation in the region, without ever needing to fire from Russian soil. The scenario NATO planners fear is a pincer. Russian forces in Kaliningrad push south, Belarusian and Russian forces push north. The Suwałki corridor collapses in the middle. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, home to nearly 6 million NATO citizens, are isolated from land reinforcement. Resupply can only come by sea or air, both of which Kaliningrad's anti-ship and air defense systems are specifically designed to contest. In NATO war game simulations, a determined Russian assault on the gap can achieve a fait accompli in as few as 2 to 3 days before the alliance achieves political consensus on a response. 2 to 3 days before the first tank has crossed a border in legal terms, 3 Baltic capitals would be surrounded. That is the calculus that has driven NATO's largest eastern buildup since the Cold War. In April 2024, Germany activated the 45th Panzer Brigade in Lithuania, the first foreign deployment of a German brigade since World War II. At full strength, it will field nearly 5,000 soldiers with Leopard 2 tanks and armored vehicles, targeted for full combat readiness by 2027. Lithuania has also finalized an agreement to locally assemble 41 Leopard 2A8 main battle tanks by 2030, a country of fewer than 3 million people building its own armored force from scratch. At Bemowo, Piskie, directly adjacent to the Suwałki Gap, a U.S.-led enhanced forward presence battlegroup fields M100 Abrams tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles alongside British, Romanian, and Croatian troops, carried integrated with Poland's 15 Mechas Brigade in November 2024. Poland launched its East Shield defensive network, a $2.5 billion system of fortifications spanning 700 kilometers along its borders with Russia and Belarus. October 25, the presidents of Poland and Lithuania inaugurated a new cross-border highway, the Via Baltica, running directly through the Suwałki corridor, carried a 4-lane expressway linking Warsaw to Kaunas and through it to Tallinn. The project cost more than €2.5 billion and took over a decade to build. Its strategic purpose was stated explicitly at the opening ceremony. The road is engineered to carry military transport, providing a rapid deployment corridor for NATO reinforcements into the Baltic states. It is infrastructure built as deterrence, concrete laid in the shape of a security guarantee. But the gap is already a battleground, just not a conventional one. Russia has been running what analysts call a gray zone campaign along this corridor for years, carefully calibrated to inflict pressure without triggering Article 5. GPS signals across the Baltic region are regularly jammed from Kaliningrad, disrupting aviation, navigation and civilian systems across Finland, Lithuania, carried in northern Poland. Undersea cables connecting Finland and the Baltic states have been severed multiple times. Incidents officially called accidents, attributed to vessels with Russian connections in 2024 and 25. Both Finland and Estonia reported significant GPS interference events traced to Kaliningrad's electronic warfare infrastructure. Weaponized migration, orchestrated flows of asylum seekers pushed across the Belarus-Poland border, has stressed Polish border forces and diverted military resources. None of these acts constitute an act of war under Article 5. All of them degrade NATO's operational position, test alliance cohesion, and impose costs on member states without a shot being fired. In September 2025, during the Zapad exercises, Russian and Belarusian forces staged maneuvers that OSI analysts tracked as a rehearsal of precisely this scenario. Iskander launchers positioned on the E28 highway toward Poland. Combined arms drills near the Belarusian border with Lithuania. NATO responded with Baltic Sentry in January 2025 and Task Force X-Baltic in June 2025. Integrating over 60 autonomous maritime platforms and AI-driven surveillance of Baltic Sea approaches, an acknowledgement that the sea lanes, too, would be contested from the first hour, 65 kilometers. Everything east of it depends on everything west of it staying open. If Russia closes the Suwałki gap, the Baltic states do not lose a road, they lose their connection to an alliance that made them a promise. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania joined NATO in 2004 precisely because they understood what it meant to be isolated. They had lived it. They spent half a century as Soviet republics, cut off from the outside world, and they joined NATO so that would never happen again. If the gap falls, that understanding gets tested in the worst possible way. The question is not whether NATO has the troops to hold the corridor. It is building them now. The question is whether it can hold them in time, before a 2 to 3 day fait accompli becomes irreversible, and then every government in Europe, and Washington, has to decide in real time what that promise was actually worth.